Imagine you're on a plane, cruising thousands of feet above the ground, but suddenly, something feels off. You look around. Every single passenger is unconscious. The flight attendants, not moving. You rush toward the cockpit and realize the unthinkable. Both the pilot and the co-pilot are unconscious too. No one is flying the plane, and yet it keeps going for minutes, maybe hours, drifting through the sky with no one in control. What would you even see in that moment? What would you do? Because this isn't just imagination. This actually happened. Welcome to TrueMystix, where we uncover the most mysterious and unbelievable real stories. On August 14th, 2005, Helios Airways Flight 522 took off from Larnaca, Cyprus, heading to Prague, with a stop in Athens. It was supposed to be a completely normal commercial flight. On board were 115 passengers and 6 crew members. Families, travelers, people heading to their destinations, completely unaware of what was about to happen. At first, everything was routine. The boarding process went smoothly. Passengers settled into their seats. Flight attendants prepared for takeoff. The aircraft climbed steadily into the sky, reaching its cruising altitude of 34,000 feet. Inside the cabin, everything felt normal. People were talking, relaxing, maybe even sleeping. But shortly after reaching altitude, something went wrong. Air traffic control suddenly lost radio contact with the plane. At first, no one panicked. This kind of thing can happen. Sometimes it's just a minor communication issue, but minutes passed, and still no response. Then, things got strange. About an hour later, controllers noticed something unusual on radar. The plane wasn't continuing along its planned route. Instead, it was circling over Greece, repeating the same path again, and again, and again. That's when concerns started turning into alarm. The Greek Air Force was immediately notified. 2 F-16 fighter jets were scrambled to intercept the aircraft. What they were about to witness would become one of the most chilling scenes in aviation history. As the fighter pilots approached the plane and looked inside, they couldn't believe their eyes. Passengers were slumped in their seats, heads tilted, bodies completely still. No movement, no reactions. Oxygen masks were hanging down from the ceiling, some swinging slightly, as if time itself had frozen inside the cabin. And inside the cockpit, no one appeared to be flying the aircraft. The captain was unconscious. A fully functioning aircraft, flying through the sky with no one awake. So what happened? The answer goes back to something incredibly small. Something almost impossible to notice. A single switch. Earlier that day, the aircraft had completed a previous flight. During that flight, the crew reported something unusual. There was a strange noise coming from one of the doors. They also noticed that part of the door seal seemed frozen. Not something extremely dangerous, but definitely worth checking. So after landing, maintenance engineers were called in. They began inspecting the aircraft carefully. As part of their checks, they performed a pressurization test. Now here's where everything starts to change. To run that test, they had to manually control the cabin pressurization system, which meant switching it from auto to manual. This allowed them to test how the system behaved under controlled conditions. The test was completed. Everything seemed fine. No major issues were found. But there was one critical mistake. They forgot to switch the system back to auto. That one small detail would soon turn into a deadly chain of events. Before takeoff, pilots are trained to check every system, every switch, every setting. But on this day, the flight was already delayed. There was pressure to leave on time. Things were rushed, and that small switch, quietly sitting in the wrong position, was completely overlooked, still set to manual. So when the plane took off and began climbing, the cabin was no longer being pressurized automatically, which means as the aircraft climbed higher, the air inside the cabin became thinner and thinner. Oxygen levels slowly started dropping, But here's the dangerous part. This doesn't feel dramatic at first. There's no loud warning for passengers. No instant panic. Just a slow, silent change. At around 12,000 feet, an alarm started sounding in the cockpit. But here's the problem. That alarm sounded very similar to another warning pilots hear frequently. A takeoff configuration warning. Something they're used to dealing with. So the captain assumed it wasn't serious, just a minor issue. But it wasn't. It was the cabin altitude warning, a signal that the aircraft wasn't being properly pressurized, that oxygen levels were dropping, and time was running out. The captain contacted ground operations, trying to understand what was going on. At first, he believed it was just a routine alert, but the dispatcher on the ground realized something didn't make sense. That alarm should not be going off at that stage of flight. So the call was transferred to a ground engineer. What followed was a confusing and worrying conversation. The engineer asked simple questions, trying to diagnose the issue, but the captain's answers didn't make sense. He sounded slow, disoriented, confused, as if he couldn't fully understand what was happening, because by that point, the effects had already started. Hypoxia, a condition where the body doesn't get enough oxygen. And the most dangerous part? You don't realize it's happening. At first, it feels harmless, a little dizziness, a slight headache. Then confusion begins. Thinking becomes slower. Decisions become harder. And soon, you lose awareness completely. You don't even realize you're in danger. Inside the cockpit, the pilots were losing control of their own minds. But to them, everything still felt somewhat normal. Meanwhile, the aircraft kept climbing. At around 14,000 feet, the oxygen masks deployed automatically in the cabin. This was a clear emergency signal. Passengers were supposed to put them on immediately, but those masks only provide limited oxygen. About 10 to 15 minutes, just enough time for the pilots to bring the plane down to a safe altitude. But that only works if someone is actually flying the plane, and no one was. Inside the cockpit, things got worse. The pilots became more disoriented. Their thinking became slower. Instead of focusing on the real issue, they started paying attention to other alerts, like a cooling system warning. They discussed circuit breakers, small technical issues, completely missing the real danger, the lack of oxygen. Back on the ground, the engineer kept asking one crucial question. Is the pressurization system set to auto? But by then, the crew could no longer respond properly. There was confusion, broken communication, and then silence. One by one, everyone on board lost consciousness. Passengers, crew members, pilots, all of them. But the plane, it kept flying. The autopilot system continued doing exactly what it was programmed to do. Maintaining altitude, following the route, keeping everything stable, as if nothing was wrong. For nearly 3 hours, this aircraft flew through the sky, with no one conscious inside. A fully operational plane turned into a silent ghost. Back on the ground, concern turned into panic. Air traffic controllers tried everything. They called the aircraft repeatedly. They contacted nearby planes. They broadcasted messages on multiple frequencies. More than 30 attempts were made. No response, just silence. Then came the moment that changed everything. The fighter jets arrived. As they flew alongside the aircraft, they confirmed the worst. Passengers were unconscious. Oxygen masks hanging. No movement anywhere. It was a flying disaster, still in the air. But then, something unexpected happened. One of the fighter pilots noticed movement inside the cockpit. Someone was still alive, slowly, weakly, barely able to stand. A figure approached the controls. It was a flight attendant, one of the few who had managed to stay conscious longer. Likely using a portable oxygen bottle, he stepped into the cockpit, sat in the captain's seat, and tried to save the plane. For a brief moment, There was hope. A single person, fighting against time, against oxygen loss, against impossible odds. But it didn't last. And what happened next made this situation even more terrifying. Before we continue, if you enjoy videos like this, take a second to check out the videos appearing on your screen right now. Now, back to the story. The engines eventually ran out of fuel. One by one, they shut down. Silence replaced the sound of engines. The plane began to descend, uncontrolled, falling from the sky, and moments later, Helios Flight 522 crashed into the mountains near Athens. No one survived. The investigation later revealed the full truth. A single switch, left in the wrong position, a warning, misunderstood, and a silent threat that no one realized in time. This tragedy changed aviation forever. It led to improved pilot training, clearer warning systems, stricter safety procedures. Because sometimes, it's not a massive failure that causes disaster. It's a small mistake. That goes unnoticed. And in this case, that one mistake turned a normal flight into a ghost plane in the sky. A chilling reminder that at 34,000 feet, even silence can be deadly. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to TrueMystix for more videos like this.